Welcome back to From the Shed End, episode 128, with myself, Theo, and the other Theo. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good, thanks. Got back from Rome on Saturday, which was a nice little 3 or 4 day trip. And actually, funny enough, the last time I was in Rome, October 2017, Roma against Chelsea in the Champions League. Travelled to that game. Score aside, it was a good trip. And actually, the friend I travelled with was the friend who invited me to his wedding in Rome this
Okay.
time. So it's almost like a full circle from
Yeah, yeah.
traveling to Rome to watch the football to see my friend get married in Rome. But yeah, really good trip. I'm getting a bit bored of the international break, so looking forward to Premier League returning this weekend. Been watching a lot of the US Open tennis, keeping myself busy. But yeah, I'm good as always. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I survived the 6 week school summer holiday, so that's always a bonus, isn't it? When you can sort of come out the back end of that. Any parents will know what I'm talking about there. But no, it's good. Good. Got away as well, as you know. A nice week in Palma. Just relaxed and just drank lots of alcohol. So good to get back into a good routine. Obviously, get back to like you said, football almost starts and then it gets taken away from us in terms of the domestic football. But it is good to be back. If you're new to the channel, if you're watching on YouTube, you're watching as part of the live stream, please make sure you subscribe and you like the video. There's a Linktree link in the description as well, so make sure you hit that Linktree link. It'll take you to the social accounts and the audio version of the podcast as well. And again, if you're on the audio version, still hit the Linktree link. So you can still subscribe to the YouTube as well. So we appreciate everyone that is doing that at the moment. We started this episode when I spoke to you this morning, and we sort of said, have we got much to talk about? And then we've drawn up the list of things that we need to talk about. We want to try and talk about. We've actually got quite a bit, so we're going to try and keep it timed and all the rest of it. But let's start with the big news that came out last week, the back end of last week, where I think it was Matt Law, I think probably broke the news first in terms of tension between Clearlake and Todd Boehly, and both sides of the Blue Co, if you can call it that, are trying to almost outbuy each other. Seems like there's a lot of tension, a lot of unrest at the very top of the club, which kind of makes sense now how the things have been happening behind the scenes since the takeover. What's your initial assessments of how things aren't going so well at the top?
Well, firstly, it's really not positive news because these are the guys that are in charge at the very top of the hierarchy, and you expect them to be on good terms. And then the latest that's come out this year, an hour before we started recording, is that they're not even on speaking terms currently. So you've got Barley and Todd Boehly, the two guys who are in charge of making the biggest decisions that will impact the football club. And the pair of them aren't even talking to each other, which is not good news for everyone below them, because everything that kind of comes from them will trickle down to the rest. And if they're not speaking terms and they're not making good decisions or collaborating together, then it will trickle down and affect the rest of the owners, the other people that are in charge, the manager, the chief executive, everyone, the players, even the fans. So it's not good news. I think something needs to happen quickly. By the sounds of it, it sounds like Egbali's not going to budge and not going to sell his shares, and Bowley's not willing to sell his shares. From what I've read, from the fans' perception of what's happening, is they're kind of favouring more towards Todd Boehly and kind of have seen him as being the person who actually understands what Chelsea is, whereas Egbali clearly just sees it as a business where he wants to flip a profit. And also what I read the other day is that Boehly has always been in favour of signing more experienced players that can actually hit the ground running, whereas Clearlake and Igbali and the others wanted to kind of go for this business structure of signing these young players and then selling them at a profit, which we've seen with Diego Moreira this summer, with Angelo Gabriel having both been sold to Strasbourg and Al Nassr respectively, having barely kicked a ball for Chelsea Football Club. That being said, if the players that Boehly's signed, the experienced ones, they haven't really worked out, let's be honest. The Sterlings, the Aubameyangs, the Koulibalis. So I think there still needs to be a lot of kind of, if Boehly's to kind of remain and Boehly's the main man who's going to take charge, there seems to be a lot that he needs to do to get those experienced players in, the likes of the Thiago Silvas that we saw work so well 4 seasons ago. I remember we recorded this in an episode that never got uploaded, but we both really wanted Matt Hummels at Chelsea.
Yeah.
So these are the type of guys that we really would have liked to see play for the football club. But yeah, I think Matt Law even described it as a civil war between Todd Boehly and Egbali. So it's really not positive news, and I really hope it gets sorted out quickly, because it will have severe repercussions on the rest of the football club if they just not on speaking terms and not collaborating effectively together.
Yeah, it's massively worrying, because I think when you think back to when the takeover happened, and I remember, I can't remember, it might have been Eunice Talks Football. Obviously big sort of platform for Chelsea followers to listen to. And I remember him saying, having two powerful, people at the very top of anything, let alone a football club, there's always going to be issues, because, you want to take the club in one direction, and, the rest of the board and everyone else wants to take it in another direction. And when that happens, there's always going to be friction and tension, and eventually that will snap, and we'll be at the point that we're at now with Chelsea. So I think this has always been on the cards, and I think it's telling, now that it's kind of coming out, and the news is trickling out very slowly about, the rift and the unrest. Think back to Thomas Tuchel's sacking. Think back to, like you just said, about some of the signings that we've made, even like an Enzo Fernandez, who I'm not saying we shouldn't have signed him, but reading into it from what I've been reading on The Athletic, that was something that kind of was spearheaded by one of, I'm not sure who, but one side of the ownership. And you look at some, like you said, some of the players that we've brought in and haven't played a minute of football, but we've sold them on. From what I've read, Todd Boehly is very, very keen on trying to make sure that we sign proven, ready players that can play, in the league, in the team now. And I like that idea. And I think we did try and see that. If you think back to some of the signings, Rafinha and those sort of players that we were trying to get in initially, and you never really saw both of them negotiating together, if I remember correctly, from the very start. It was always Todd Boehly was flying here and Ekbali was flying here, and it was very rare. And then obviously recent times, you've not really seen them together. They used to go into the dressing room together. Now, Ekbali's the one that you see coming out. I think he came out of the dressing room after Palace game. It's just it's strained. And I think you can't have that in any business, let alone a football, a multi-million, billion-pound football club. You can't have that at all. What do you think needs to be done? I mean, obviously, both still have a say at the table. Nothing gets passed through. I think Ben Jacobs reported on this as well. Nothing gets passed through without everyone agreeing and everyone, putting their hand up to agree to something. Any decision that's made at Chelsea. But surely the best outcome of this now is that someone is brought out, whether that's Todd Boehly or someone steps back a little bit more and just plays a very silent partner in the business.
Yeah, I think it's easier said than done, because by the sounds of it, like you kind of summed it up perfectly, they're both two very big egos. And when you've got these two kind of superpower or big egos running a football club, it's going to be tough for one of them to kind of give in. And I feel like it's almost like too many cooks spoil the broth in a way, when you've got so many people wanting to be the key decision makers and taking charge in the ownership. But the only way it gets sorted is, like you said, realistically, if one of them just gives in and buys and sells their shares to the other and gets bought out in a way. But until that happens, I think they might just remain on these kind of bad terms and almost take their decisions independently from each other, which may lead to what we're seeing now, kind of them negotiating for different players individually in different countries, and then kind of having what we kind of saw this summer and January 2022, where you've got 35 players at the training ground, some in the bomb squad, some in the manager's first team plans, others not even in match day squads when they're fully fit. Because by the sounds of it, it sounds like some of these players are Boehly signings, some of them are like Barley signings, and that needs to stop, because clearly the manager's not happy with this approach. I think that's ultimately what pushed Tuchel out as well.
Yeah.
Because I know that Tuchel got sacked almost, I think it was 2 years ago to this day, like a couple of days ago actually. But the warning signs were there in the summer, I felt. The warning signs were there, like even as soon as the ownership came in, you could tell he just didn't have the same charismatic approach as he did before throughout that summer. The preseason results were poor. And then I think Potter was just a yes man, so he was just happy with anything that was thrown in his direction. But let's be honest, I think we see that Pochettino was sacked, but I think he also kind of almost walked away from the job after that kind of end of season meeting. I genuinely feel like they couldn't come to some kind of agreement for next season for the summer transfer plans and business, and they both kind of agreed to part ways. So if this continues the way it's going and Maresca is the man for the job, I would not be surprised if Maresca wants a new challenge or decides to walk away if the two of them are just being spoiled kids throwing money at the different players that the manager doesn't want. So like you said, it's going to have severe repercussions, and it's very worrying for not just their kind of relationship and the way that the football club is conducted, but also for the transfer business and the way and the results on the pitch, and for the fans' perception of the football club as well.
Yeah, it's worrying. I mean, again, I go back to, we've got Lawrence Stewart and Paul Winstanley, who you would think are the two that would, be the the face of negotiations and trying to make things happen off the field. But it almost seems like their jobs are almost redundant. If what we're hearing is true, that Barley is the one and Todd Boehly as well, they're both almost saying these are the players we want to sign. And if that is the case, then it kind of, Christopher Vivel, even going back to him, bringing him in, and then he almost walks away from the project before it's even started. These things must have been so clear for everyone else away from, the football pitch, away from the fans. It must have been so clear. You just mentioned Thomas Tuchel. Pochettino was another one. Even Frank Lampard kind of said that things aren't the same when he took it on as interim. Things aren't the same at the club anymore. And he still echoes that now when he talks about Chelsea, that, things are different there. Let's kind of segue into Victor Osimhen as well, because obviously we know that deal was really, really close last week before the window was shut, or the week before when the window was shut. This kind of sums up the ownership, because we've been following this deal for many, many months. And to leave it so late, maybe because they were looking at alternative options. But again, it kind of tells you there's a rift at the very top, because we couldn't even get a deal that we know we need to get done in the space of the time that we had. I know you wanted to touch on some points around Osimhen as well. And obviously the John Obi Mikel podcast, as One Obi Mikel podcast, has touched on it as well. But what's your thoughts on us not signing possibly a replacement for Diego Costa, which we still haven't done?
Yeah, I was in two minds because I felt like its business should have been done earlier in the transfer window. If I'm honest, if we really wanted a number 9 and a striker, it should have been done a lot earlier. That a week before the window closes, or even 5 days before the window closes, we're supposedly negotiating with Tony. We're also negotiating with Osimhen, so it felt like it was almost trying to tease the other one, showing like, okay, if you're not interested, we're going to speak to this guy in the hope that maybe Osimhen lowers his demands and his wages. In terms of Osimhen as a player, I think he's very talented, clearly. He's proved that he's a fantastic striker. I think they won the Scudetto with Napoli, and it was their first time since God knows when they last won the Serie A. So he kind of spearheaded that title campaign. That being said, he's still young. He's coming off the back of a relatively poor season individually and at team level as well. I know that John Obi Mikel is a huge fan of his, obviously both being Nigerian, and I think he was invited to the Obi Mikel podcast back end of last year and kind of appeared as a guest, and you could kind of tell that Mikel was trying to get his thoughts on Chelsea and whether he'd eventually move there. And then after the quotes that have come out, I've actually listened to it, but Mikel's latest recording or episode, Mikel's almost hinting that he was trying to play a part in Osimhen coming to Chelsea this summer, almost being his agent at times by the way he's talking and the quotes that are coming. But he was basically saying that it was extremely close to happening, that the club offered him to Chelsea. Napoli offered him to Chelsea. There was just a few things that just couldn't get sorted in time, which included the paperwork and the medical. But I think the main thing that meant that it wasn't able to get sorted in time, and this was what Fabrizio and all the other reporters were saying on deadline day, was that his demands were just too high. I think he was wanting a ridiculous or an extortionate amount of money on weekly wages, and clearly that doesn't match the new wage structure at Chelsea. And I think that's one of the main reasons we're kind of forcing Chilwell and Sterling out, whether that not be this summer, it will be next summer. So yeah, I think that clearly wasn't going to work out as well. And I'm also kind of glad that Chelsea didn't give in. We were very resilient in this, and we didn't actually kind of give in to Osimhen's crazy demands and kind of offer him a contract on, was it 250,000 a week or whatever he wanted. I think the lowest we were willing to go was a kind of mid 100,000s, I think. And also, if I'm completely honest, I still think we can do without a striker this season. We've got Mark Way, who can play the Conference League games, I feel. We've got Nicholas Jackson, who's already scored 2 goals in 3 games this season, and if I'm completely honest, is actually quite underrated. Underrated his numbers from last season. I agree, he's not the full package. He's not the full package at all, but I think he gets a lot of criticism and stick despite actually kind of putting in some very good numbers. I think 15 goals in all competitions last season. I still think he needs to sort out his big ego and his stupid Instagram posts occasionally, and he needs to cut that out of his game and his personality. And then we've got players like Nkuku and João Felix, who can occasionally play number 9 if it's needed. And also, last thing I'll say is, now that Osimhen was left without Saudi Arabia, without Chelsea, he was forced to go to Galatasaray to play his football. And Galatasaray had even put in, I think, a clause in his contract that said he can leave in January if an offer is made to Napoli for the right price. So it almost still feels like Osimhen is pushing for that January move. So I would not be surprised if we record another episode come January and we're discussing this again in January.
I second that 100%. I worry that we're going to sign an older version of Nicholas Jackson, a slightly older version. I say that because I'm pretty sure he's only hit beyond 20 goals, league goals, once. I think it was the 22-23 season where I think he netted 26 goals. A little bit less, I think it was 15 last season. But when I watch him, I'll be honest, I haven't watched him most of last season. It was the season before. I think when he was on fire, he was prolific. Even then, I wasn't entirely convinced by him. I don't know if there's something, I don't know. Maybe it's football's changing. I haven't really watched football with a traditional number 9 as much as I used to. But I just think, is he worth the money? And I kind of back up what you said, I don't think we should have bowed down to the demands at all, and I think that's probably why a lot of these stories now about the ownership and, bumping heads is coming out, because that was clearly one of the deals that Chelsea wanted to get done on the day before the deadline day and before it's shut. And I just think I'm glad we kind of stuck to our guns and said, you know what, these are the terms that we want to offer you. If you don't want them, then don't take them. There's a lucrative deal that's been offered to a player in the Saudi Pro League, which he could have accepted. If I'm honest, it sounds like his agent completely messed up everything on the last couple of days before the window. And I think he negotiated the deal to Galatasaray without his agent as well, if I remember correctly. So it tells you that clearly it was more the agent that was steering what was happening and orchestrating behind the scenes. But he's a very good player. He is a good player. I just don't know if, again, I want someone that I know in the Premier League is going to be able to cope with the Premier League and cope with the pressure of having to score 20 goals a season. And like I said, we haven't had that since Diego Costa, which was how many years ago. So I want someone that's going to come in and understand that there isn't going to be time. We're going to give you a season or two to find you. You have to come in and be able to hit 20 goals a season, because if you're spending that much money on someone, the wages as well, we're not buying you for future. We're buying you because we think you can do the job now. I don't see that in him. I just don't see him being able to score 20 plus goals a season. But it's interesting, like you said, January comes. I think we will go back in for him. John Obi Mikel is clearly someone that is, and has now almost built up a relationship with Paul Winstanley by the sounds of things as well. It sounds like this deal will get done. I don't think that Saudi deal will be on the table again. They've just signed Ivan Toney. He's on 400 grand a week, which is crazy. It's a podcast in itself. I think we'll get him. I think we will get him. But my worry is that I like the guy from Sporting, Gyökeres.
Yeah.
I think
I was about to mention his name. I think he's the package. He
scored yesterday again. I think he scored. I don't know if it was one goal.
Twice. I think he scored twice against Estonia of Sweden, and I actually watched him at Sporting back in May.
Yeah.
His movement off the ball, on the ball, and he's just got that instinct for goal. But yeah, I think he might cost more because he's kind of happy.
His value is going to go up now, isn't it, as well?
Exactly. But Osimhen, by the looks of, the one thing I really want to highlight from these quotes from the Mikel Obi podcast is apparently Osimhen wanted to move to Chelsea.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people were kind of mentioning that he didn't want to go to Chelsea. He was kind of hoping to go to Saudi, but by the looks of it, he really was pushing for the move to Chelsea. So like you said, this will happen in January. If it was going to happen this summer, it will happen in January. Especially given that kind of clause in his Galatasaray loan contract that will allow him to leave in January. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he's the guy who's going to be there to replace Costa, Drogba. We've had so many kind of attempts at trying to replace them, but we've always failed. The Moratas, the Abrahams, God knows who else. But Jesus. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Aubameyang, another one. I remember actually I watched Osimhen. Patrick Aubameyang, there we go. The first time I watched Aubameyang is when we played Lille in the Champions League in 2019, and he actually scored against us.
Yeah, I mean, he was
Osimhen,
good.
sorry.
He was good. He was good for Arsenal. He was good. You know, had good spells for Arsenal, and you know,
So not Aubameyang, Osimhen I was talking
Osimhen.
about.
Yeah. Sorry. But no, Osimhen for me is a. I mean, I'm just looking at Gyökeres. I hope I'm not saying his name wrong, but last season, 33 matches, 29 goals. This is just in the Portuguese league, by the way. 10 assists. I mean, and I know it's people can say it's a Portuguese league and all the rest of it, and he's only, I think they signed him, or he played previously for Coventry, didn't he, a couple of seasons ago? So I get people are going to say it's just their league, but he's doing it in the Nations League as well. He's for me, I think he's 26 as well. So he's at that age where you want to bring someone in. I feel like he might have a release clause, or he did. Maybe I got that wrong. But either way, if we were going to sign a striker, I'd be more convinced by him a little bit more, just because I can see, when I watch him, I can see there's a striker there, and I'd love to see him at Chelsea rather than Osimhen. But it looks like we're going to get the deal done. If John Obi Mikel gets his own way, we're going to get that deal done in January, I think.
Yeah, I feel like Mikel still thinks he's working for the club at times. So.
He probably is on the side. It's probably his little side hustle. But no,
I need to give the episode a listen tonight to get the full kind of thoughts of Mikel on this.
Yeah, no, I'll be doing the same, and hopefully all Chelsea fans will be as well. So make sure you leave your thoughts, your comments on that in the section as well once you have done so. Let's move over. Jadon Sancho very quickly signed last minute deadline day. Before I say any more, I want to get your views actually on that.
Yeah, I'm a bit 50-50 on this one. I remember like a lot of my United mates were messaging me as the deal was about to get announced, asking me like, why are you signing him? You got so much attacking depth, you don't need him. And I was very 50-50 and on the fence, because if I'm completely honest, I felt like had the move collapsed or fallen through, I'd have just shrugged and said, it's fine, we've got lots of other players that can fill in. And at the same time, I also feel like the deal we were offered to sign him was too good to miss out on. In the way, it's obviously a loan for the season, and then if we finish over 14th, we'll pay United, I think, between 20 and 25 million for a player that, let's remember, had a quality 6 months at Borussia Dortmund. Back end of last season, when he actually was able to play his football under a manager that was playing him in, and there were no tension or rifts at the club. So I think if we get that Jadon Sancho from Dortmund, we've got a really, really good player on our hands. And also what I really like about him is all these tweets that are resurfacing. The fact that he is a Chelsea fan. He grew up being a Chelsea fan. I think he was in the Watford Academy, or City Academy, but I think he's from around London. I think he's from Camberwell, if I'm not mistaken, in South London. Grew up being a Chelsea fan. Is that famous tweet from him saying, "Champions of Europe, we know what we are," on the 19th of May 2012, which is always nice to see. And he knows a lot of the kind of the Reece James and the boys that were in the younger England kind of setup. I just feel like a lot of people are remembering the Jadon Sancho at United, who wasn't that prolific, kind of struggled a lot of times. But if we get the Sancho at Dortmund, and also if we kind of need a lot of depth given the amount of fixtures that we're going to have in the Conference League on Thursday night, the League Cup, we've got a fixture against Barrow in 2 weeks on a Tuesday night. These are the type of players that we're going to need to be able to rotate. And then there's so many players that, when we talk about attacking depth, the likes of Neto and Cuckoo, that are injury prone, and they're going to face weeks on the sidelines. So I think it's a decent signing. I'm still a bit on the fence. It'll be interesting to revisit this one in December, because a lot of our loans haven't really planned out the way we've wanted. Especially, I think the only one I can remember being quite successful was Kovacic. But even his first season at Chelsea was quite underwhelming. Difficult, yeah. So it'll be quite interesting. But if I'm to be honest, I can't see us finishing below 14th. So this move is going to be made permanent, no matter. You're laughing, but I think
saying a word.
I'm like 99% sure this will be made permanent in the summer. But yeah, what are your thoughts on it?
I think I agree with you. I think, the Borussia Dortmund Sancho was obviously, you saw a bit of a spark come back into him, and, he'd had a really difficult time at United, and for whatever reasons, whatever they were. I like the deal. The deal makes sense. We went in for this deal, I think, early in the transfer window, and United were coming out with, 50 to 60 million. And I think we were going to walk away from it, and we knew that United at some point we're going to have to drop the value and all the rest of it. So it does make sense to bring someone in. And I agree with you, the rotation, the fact we were playing Thursdays, Sundays, and just having depth in the squad, which is one of the videos I done last week, was, everyone's talking about our depth, but most clubs need that, especially if you're playing in, a Thursday night European competition. So it does make sense for us to do this deal. I think the price is brilliant. I think it's I think it's 24, maybe approaching 25. So good deal to get him done. My only worry, and I do have to say this, is the London life is very appealing. And I do hope, and I don't want to stigma or, stereotype him to say that this is the sort of player or profile that I think he is, but the London life is very appealing. And when you're out there and you're back home, you're around regular people, you people that you probably grew up with and all the rest of it, and there's a distraction there. That bit does worry me a little bit, because obviously he has got that reputation of kind of getting distracted, and so as long as that doesn't happen, and he concentrates on his football, he gets his head down. I think he's worked with I can't remember his name, the guy who was at City that's now at Chelsea,
Joe Shields.
Joe Shields. So I think he's worked with him before when he's been at the City Academy, very much like Lavia. So he's got familiar faces around him. So
Palmer, Lavia, Sancho, I think, were all kind of maybe Joe Shields kind of recruitment targets, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So I think having that sort of circle of people around you should hopefully help him. He just can't get distracted. I think back to Ross Barkley, he came down, bags of potential, the London life distracted him. He moved away. He's now at Villa, but when he was at Luton, he was playing really well because he didn't have those distractions around him anymore, and he grew up obviously as a player. We can't allow Jadon Sancho to kind of come in and be distracted, because we're going to need him this season, I think. Yeah. So very good signing. I think it's a good signing. Got Sterling off the books as well. We're going to get Sterling off the books eventually as well. So I think when you look at comparisons, we're losing a bit of potential experience from Sterling and, a decorated Premier League player, but we're bringing in someone that has bags of potential to go on to be one of those players that's going to be vital for us this season.
Yeah, it took a massive wage cut as well to join Chelsea, if I'm not mistaken, which is good as well, showing that he's committed to playing for Chelsea, money aside. And it's also good from us, again, trying to get these players on lower wages so they fit the wage structure. But yeah, good player, bags of potential. It'll be interesting as well, because he was in the England kind of fold 2020, 2021, I think. And then I think got kind of phased out slightly when he kind of wasn't playing regularly at United. But now that hopefully if he's able to regain some confidence, get on the pitch, play 90 minutes, then I would have kind of expect him to be a kind of a contender for the 2026 World Cup, or by the time for the next lot of summer friendlies perhaps, or something like that.
Yeah, he needs to try and aim to do that. I think that's, like I said, he's still young in terms of being 24, so he's got plenty of football years ahead of him. So you don't want to go to two big clubs in England and kind of ruin your reputation by falling out with the manager, or being distracted with, going out after a game and, being around people like that circle of friends that you've probably grew up with and things like that. You just need to focus on the football. And that's my only worry. It can happen to anyone. So
yeah, I think it was it Madueke who got...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think he was partying 2 nights before a match, and
afterwards as well.
Pochettino kind of banned him from a couple match day squads.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's important not to get distracted, but you also need a manager that's going to discipline a player like that.
I think Maresca will.
Yeah.
just going off
Italian ruthlessness, I feel.
Just going off the fact, Chilwell still hasn't got a club, and I think just reading before, David Datro Fofana might be going to Athens. I think trying to get a deal done. AEK Athens before the deadline shuts on Wednesday. So Maresca, I think, will not take any rubbish from any of these players. If they fall out of line, that's it. You're not getting back into the squad. So we'll have to see. But let's talk Conference League, because very difficult, I would say. One was a relatively easy leg in terms of Servette in the home tie, but the difficult one away, I felt, was a very painful watch for us in that second leg. We still managed to qualify. We now know the teams, which I should have got up before, but we now know the teams that will be playing in the Conference League. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, even regardless of our fixtures, if you look at this is no disrespect to the team in the Conference League, but if you look at the entire list of teams throughout the entire tournament. And let's remember that the new format, Europa
Yeah.
League teams don't drop into the Conference League.
Yeah.
So the teams that we're seeing now in the Conference Leagues are the teams that will be there in the knockout stages as well, or at least half of them. I think I mentioned maybe Copenhagen, Real Betis, and potentially Fiorentina being maybe the three teams I personally feel maybe to watch out for.
Yeah.
But then in our kind of set of fixtures, we've got Ghent at home. We've got Heidenheim away. And if people who don't know Heidenheim, I think they finished 8th in the Bundesliga last season. And I think they were a bit of an unknown team, a bit like they did a bit of a Luton in a way. They kind of came up, did
Yeah.
relatively well. Obviously, Luton got relegated, but it's that kind of small kind of team. And then we got Noah, who I believe are an Armenian team at home.
Yeah.
Panathinaikos away, which I think is the standout fixture for me.
Yeah.
A lot of history in the Champions League. I was reading an article how they played Ajax in the Champions League final a while back as well. A lot of, I think Chelsea fans were trying to make the trip to Athens as well, probably the most appealing of the destinations,
I
including
don't
myself.
know. Shamrock Rovers.
That's a
cold,
home
wet.
game, unfortunately.
It's still a lovely
Yeah.
tie to go to, but yeah.
Yeah, Shamrock Rovers obviously being the other home team, and I think I'm missing one, Astana.
Astana.
Kazakhstani team,
Yeah.
which for me is the one that I wish we'd avoided, because you don't want to be traveling to Kazakhstan on a Wednesday, having to play them on Thursday, travel back on a Friday morning, and then have a fixture maybe Sunday or Monday.
But it goes back to your point, doesn't it, about the squad depth and having players that you can rotate in and out of the team. So I think that's a very good point that you made earlier.
Exactly. I think, if I'm not wrong, I think that's one of the later fixtures. So I'm kind of hoping by the time we play Astana, we would have maybe already secured top 8 or however it works in the league format table. So even more room to rotate. And two players that we have actually mentioned in the last couple of pods, Kani Chukwuemeka and Cesare Casadei, who have stayed with Chelsea. They're not in the bomb squad anymore. They're training with the first team. So potentially those are players that could play a part in these games when we need them. And actually, for me, they're very decent players.
Yeah.
They played a good part in Pochettino's plans back end of last season. Chukwuemeka, if it wasn't for injuries, I would have thought would have been a regular starter at times. So I'd expect the two of them to get some game time on Thursday night against the likes of Shamrock, Astana, Noah, those teams.
Dewsbury Hall as well.
Dewsbury Hall, another one, I think he'll be more of an impact player in the Premier League coming off the bench, but these are the type of games, and I think he started both the games against Servette. So it's an indication that he'll be one of those main kind of guys in the Conference League. I think Disasi, Badiashile, Tosin as well. I think, again, I'll go back to what I said before. If we don't win the Conference League, I'll be very embarrassed and almost ashamed as well.
Yeah, I think we've got to. And again, this is no disrespect to any of the clubs that are in there because, on paper, you would expect us to beat a large proportion of these teams. It's one of those that you just look at the amount of money we've spent, the history in European competitions that we've had as well, and we shouldn't be struggling against possibly any of these teams. And that's again no sort of, I mean, Fiorentina's a big one in there, like you said as well. Copenhagen, another one, but there are going to be curveballs in there, and I think we still have to plan, prepare, and train like we're playing. I think I said it in one of the previews as well, that we're playing like it's our final in the Conference League every game. Just treat it with the respect that it needs to be treated with. But I do agree that, which we're gonna talk about as well, the omissions from the squad. Romeo Lavia, Wesley Fofana, and Cole Palmer were the key big absentees. Obviously Ben Chilwell and David Dattra Fofana were the other kind of two big names that were missing from the list. But I agree with it. I did a preview on it, and I agree that neither three of those, Fofana and Lavia, both missed a lot of football last season. Cole Palmer, we have to wrap him in cotton wool. He is going to be one of the key players for us this season, whether we like it or not. He's going to be the one that, centrally, especially if he plays more central, a lot of the football is going to come through him. So I agree with those three not being in it, and we shouldn't need those three to beat any of the the games that we've got coming up in these fixtures. But do you agree with the omissions? Do you think that maybe we should have taken Cole Palmer as a safety net and put him on the bench?
Yeah, I mean, to go back to your first point, we can't take any of these fixtures for granted as well. We just got across the line against Servette, so we need to play every single one of them almost like it is a European final and treat every 90 minutes like we're really pushing for the 3 points. And in regards to the omissions, at first I did have a eyebrow raise because I was a bit shocked to see three arguably first team starters being omitted from the Conference League squad. Then the more I thought about it, I realised it made complete sense. Let's remember that Lavia and Fofana, between the two of them, they only played 20 minutes of football last season. And that was just Lavia who picked up those minutes against Crystal Palace in between, I think, Christmas and New Year's, and then got injured again and missed the rest of the season. Cole Palmer just withdrawn from the England squad with muscle fatigue. So he's clearly, had a really busy summer playing at the Euros, training with England. Played, I think, all three of our first Premier League games against City, Wolves, and Palace. And also, he's going to be one of those players that's probably going to start every single Premier League game at the weekend. So, can we afford to take him, to these countries abroad, play him against Panathinaikos in Athens, against Astana in Kazakhstan? I don't think so. I'd much rather, like you said, just wrap him up in cotton wool, let him kind of rest at Cobham, let him get his muscle therapy that he needs at Cobham, give him a Theragun so he can just take it easy at home and, recover. And then, like we just spoke about before, this is probably the reason we signed guys like Neto, Felix, Sancho, Mudryk, another one who probably won't get as much game time now in the Premier League, but I expect him to pick up some minutes in the Conference League because that's probably his level, if I'm honest. So I think all three of those players makes complete sense to admit them, and probably a good thing for them as well, because it means that they're kind of seen as starters in the Premier League as well. So they should be be happy with their decision themselves.
Yeah, I think it's. I kind of get the raised eyebrows because you do want your best squad to go and play in every game that they can possible. But you got to think about, like you just said, about the traveling to Kazakhstan, and just traveling alone can take it out of you. We forget that these players are the turnaround of matches. Travel, like you said, travel Wednesday, play Thursday, travel back Friday. You've got a game on a Sunday. You've got to have a training session in between then as well. It's a lot to do in the space of 5 days. So I don't think we need them. I think we've got enough. We've got Tosin in defence as well. We've spoke about Cassidy, Dewsbury Hall, players that can kind of come in. Caicedo, Enzo is still in the team. I think there's a young lad called Tariq George that's also gone. He's part of the squad. So there's enough depth and this is the thing I don't get. We've got the depth in the squad. We've clearly got it. People were banging on about it on Sky and everything else last couple of weeks ago. And now there's like raised eyebrows about, we've dropped 3 players out of the team, but they're 3 players that, like you just said, essentially are going to be so crucial in the Premier League this season. Why would you want to take them and let them travel, 4 or 5 hours on a plane when they're not necessarily even going to kick a football? So I get it. I'm 100% with it. I want to ask you actually, are you looking forward to the because I know when we got into it last season, and it's a bit like, we're in the Conference League, and it's a bit like, but I just see it as a trophy that, we've got almost a little bit the missing piece to the puzzle. We've won everything else. You got to get some positives out of it. But for me, it's like the last little missing piece to a puzzle when you've won the Club World Cup, you've won the Champions League, you've won the Premier League, you've won the Europa League, you've won the Super Cup. Why not just add the flower vase to the trophy mantelpiece? Are you looking forward to it, or is it kind of like almost like we're just there kind of thing? Do you know what I mean?
No, I am looking forward to it. I think when I was watching the draw and they were drawing, the balls out of the pot and kind of seeing all the fixtures and thinking about the destinations I could travel to watch Chelsea abroad, I did get a bit of a buzz and excitement. And even I'm planning my trip to Athens now and trying to get a ticket. I kind of disagree with the whole kind of like missing piece in the jigsaw, because I still feel like I'd rather compete every single season in the Champions League and not having to worry about the Conference League. But it would be nice to kind of see
we
Chelsea
are where we are. We are where we are.
It's a nice looking trophy as well. I think the final was in Warsaw, if I'm not mistaken. Poland. In Poland. So but and if I'm completely honest as well, I think the Conference League is our level now. I genuinely feel like that's probably our level. I know we technically qualified for Europa League spots, so that should have been our level. But I look at guys like Mudryk, all these youngsters we brought in that probably never even kicked a ball in any European competition. I think this is our level, and so many of them, it will be good experience, hopefully, and a stepping stone for them to then get used to kind of competing at the highest level.
That's it.
In the Europa League and then the Champions League. So I am looking forward to it. I just really feel like I just don't want that fixture overload and the players to look knackered when they play Southampton after a trip to Kazakhstan or God knows who. But I think it's like we always say when we even had the I think it was talking about the fixture overload for the fans. It's just more football to watch, so it is
Yeah.
all going to be enjoyable. But yeah, let's see how it plans out. I feel like when I hear the anthem for the first time, it's really going to hit me that we're in the Conference League. But
It's going to sound a little bit different to the Champions League, I can tell you that much. No, I agree with you, because I think, we've got to remember some of these. I said it before. We don't have. I'm trying to think now. Maybe might be Ben Chilwell, might be the oldest player in the team. I think. Obviously not taking into account like Bettinelli, but outfield players might be Ben Chilwell. I think.
yeah, Desasio Chilwell, I think you're right. And
So we've lost
yeah.
a lot of experience, and I would not want to put this team in the Champions League at the moment. And I think you're right. Give them some European experience at a lower level. Some of these players haven't played. I know obviously Dewsbury Hall, I think, did play in the Conference League for Leicester, I think, or maybe the Europa League. But give them some experience, give them opportunity to just understand what it's like to play in a European competition. And everyone turns their nose up at it. It's a bit like the Carabao Cup. Everyone turns their nose up about it when you're in round 3, or you got Chesterfield or whatever, and then when you get to the final, you want to win it. And I think this will be exactly the same when we get if we get to the final. We're going to want to win the Conference League. We will. We'll be devastated if we don't win it. So for me, yes, it's not the ideal tournament to be in. It's not the ideal trophy to collect at the end of the season. But this is where we are. Like you said, it's probably the level that we are currently at the moment. We've got to just suck it up and hope we can win it. Because if we don't, it'll be a long summer. I can tell you that much. It'll be a long, long summer.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned Ben Chilwell. I know he's not in the squad, but I think he's still serving a one-match suspension from his red card at the Bernabeu.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether he actually will he ever serve it. You think?
I'm just thinking, how will it work? Because I'm assuming, I think I said last week, I think he's probably played his last game for Chelsea. I don't think we'll ever see him again unless there's a real emergency at left back, which I don't think. Even then, I think he'd probably put someone else there. If he was to sign for another club that is then in a European competition, I wonder how that works. Whether he signs for them and the ban just activates already. I don't know, but I wanted to.
I mean, there's a lot. Yeah, I was quickly on mentioning, like, it's even Reece James. He got a red against Brighton back end of last season.
So that's cleared up now. I think that's cleared up.
Has it?
Yeah, because I think he missed, even though he was injured. I think he missed the first. He would have missed, because I think it was a straight red, wasn't it? I think, or was it 2 yellows?
It was, yeah.
It was a straight
red. Like, it was the Bournemouth game end of last season, and 3 we've had now. I kind of think in my head, if he was to kind of get fit and be in the squad again, does he have to be match fit to serve the ban, or
no, it's activated. Sure, yeah. Even though he's injured, I think it's still classed as he wouldn't be playing anyway. So, which is good for him and good for us. I wanted to touch very quickly, because obviously we're still talking about kind of Cole Palmer, but we didn't mention that he has been nominated for a Ballon d'Or as well, which I think is in itself is. And this goes back to my point. We've got to remember he's 22 years of age. He's been nominated for a Ballon d'Or. I don't expect him to win it, but just to be nominated, I think it's a category 30. I think. To be included in that, one thing we do not want Cole Palmer to get is burnout and to be fatigued and to be, rusty or picking up stupid injuries. And, we're kind of heavily relying on him to be the glue in that attacking midfield option. So, do you think it's duly deserved in terms of the Ballon d'Or nomination based off the back of last season?
I think so. If you kind of read off his list of achievements, personal achievements as well, I think it was top goal scorer at Chelsea, Premier League Young Player of the Season, I believe, Chelsea Player of the Season, Players Player of the Season. I think there's a few others. I think 2 hat-tricks while he was at Chelsea as well. A couple
of man of the matches in there as well.
More than a couple man of the matches, and you think at times that he kind of like saved us that goal at the end against United. So I think personally what he's achieved is fantastic, and I'm trying to think about the criteria now, how it works for the Ballon d'Or, because I don't think it's a calendar year now, it's a season, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So I think it'll literally be the 2023-2024 season. And you look at some of the names that are also on that list, you can kind of tell it's for their personal achievements, like Mats Hummels. I think is on that list because he had a fantastic season at Dortmund as a defender, got into the Champions League final as well. I think you look at what Cole Palmer's achieved individually, hand on heart, I can say, I think if it wasn't for Cole Palmer last season, we'd probably be in the bottom half of the table.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So yeah, I think fully deserved. Whether he'll win it, I still feel like guys like Vinicius, Rodri, and possibly even Haaland would be kind of placed above him.
Bellingham,
maybe
I think.
Bellingham as well. Yeah. Another thing he did, he scored in the Euro final as well, Cole Palmer.
Yeah.
So yeah, fantastic player, fully deserved, and I think it's just exciting to see where it can go from here as well.
Yeah, I think my worry with Cole Palmer and Chelsea as well, especially with all the things going. I forgot to mention. I think the chief exec, what's his name, Chris Jurasek, has also left Chelsea. He's only been in the role for 18 months, but with all the things going on upstairs, there's going to be a point where Cole Palmer, if we don't get Champions League in the next say two seasons or so, there will become a point where a club will come in and say, look, World Cup's coming up. Champions League football is right there on your doorstep. Come and sign for us. And I wouldn't be against him leaving because I think he's that good of a player.
It's true.
We can't really hold him back. And if a big club, and I'm not saying that we aren't a big club, but in terms of where we are at the moment, comes in, they've got Champions League football that they can just dangle in front of him. He's going to want to take it. He's going to want to try and play at the top level. He sees Bellingham, he sees all these other players. Gallagher, who's now gone to Atletico. They're all playing at the top level still in terms of competitions. He's going to want the same. So I think more so we have to get things right upstairs, boardroom level, and then on the pitch as well to make sure that we can retain Enzo Fernandez, we can retain Cole Palmer, we can go and sign probably one of the best goalkeepers in, a year or two. So we've got to get things right upstairs for me.
Definitely, I think that's probably why we gave him that contract extension. Is it up to 2034 or 35, I think. I saw something. We've got Cole Palmer, Estevallo and Kendry Páez on our books until 2030 something.
It's a prison
so these
sentence.
players, if they want to leave, it's going to be it's going to be tough to kind of negotiate when they have to. They've got such a lengthy contract. But yeah, I won't blame Palmer if we still kind of continue to underperform. He's really kind of carrying Chelsea throughout these hard times, and then a club puts in an offer. They've got Champions League football. You've got an international tournament just around the corner.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee you, if Palmer was playing the way he did at a City or an Arsenal, he would have started every game of the Euros.
Oh,
I still think,
of course.
obviously he had such a good individual season, but guys like Saka, Foden, Bellingham were kind of starting ahead of him purely because they were playing for teams that had fantastic seasons. So yeah, I think that's a kind of a big worry, and first kind of priority needs to be for Boehly and Eghbali to invite each other over for coffee and just talk things through. But that's in a fancy word, I feel.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's blue sky thinking. I'm so glad as well that Cole Palmer did remove himself from the England squad. I know obviously being called up to play for your national team is obviously a privilege in itself, but I think if you know in yourself that you're not going to play, you're not going to get game time, or you are carrying a slight muscle injury or just any injury in itself, I think the best thing to do is come back to your natural surroundings, obviously Cobham, recuperate and try and get yourself ready for Bournemouth or for the next game after that. Right call from whoever made that decision.
Yeah, it is the right call. I still get a bit frustrated because I still feel like if you're available for selection, it means you're fit. And you had guys like Watkins, Foden and Palmer withdraw a couple of days after being called up. Obviously from a selfish point of view, you'd rather have him fit for Chelsea for the game against Bournemouth. And I think the issue was muscle fatigue. So maybe Palmer actually made the decision himself, being like, I need a bit of a break, I need to recover. But I'm also kind of playing devil's advocate here. If you're called up to represent your country and you're supposedly fit, then you need to kind of be on that plane, or you need to be reporting back for training with the England squad. But yeah, from a selfish point of view, I'm glad that he pulled out. And clearly, I don't think we should have any issues not having Palmer against the likes of Ireland and Finland either.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm sure it was Servette in the first leg. I'm sure he came off at the end of the game. He's sort of holding his hamstring bend.
Yeah.
So if it is that, and it's kind of, that was almost 3 weeks ago now, wasn't it? So if it is that, then you obviously wanted to give him a bit of a rest, and this is probably the perfect time to do so as well. So no, I agree. And I think Malo Gusto was the same. I think he withdrew from the under 21s for France as well. Very early before the games even, I think the squads were announced, and I think he almost withdrew within the next 24 hours from that. So I'm glad that players are sort of, if it's the players that are taking that decision to sort of step back and say, look, something isn't right, I need to report back to my club. I'm glad they're doing that rather than trying to play through an injury and then they come back. Kante was a prime example. He's always called up to play for France, and then he'd come back or he'd get an injury, or he'd try and play a game for us, and then before you know it, he's getting subbed off after 20 minutes. So, I'm glad that players are sort of taking that own responsibility in themselves to sort of say, look, I'm not right, I can't play. Give me a week or two to try and recuperate and come back as as I can for the club. Major tournaments, obviously different story. I'm sure if you're injured or slightly injured, you want to go because there's more games you're going to be playing over that period of time. But if it's 2 Nation League games that you kind of think, well, am I going to get game time anyway? I may as well go back and recover.
Definitely, usually as well as these Nations League games, as the manager plays his first team, and again in the first one, then rotates for the second one, usually. So, but yeah, right decision. Especially if Palmer made it himself, it clearly means that he's been struggling with that injuries against Servette, Malagusto as well. He got subbed off against Crystal Palace in the second half. So yeah, really hoping those 2 players are ready to play a part on against Bournemouth. If I'm not mistaken, I think Reece James and Lavia are approaching a return as well. I think it was kind of said that they'd come back after the international break. For how long, we don't know, because they're both very injury prone. But let's hope we've got a full squad once we start approaching these midweek fixtures as well.
Just very quickly, I know I sort of touched on it before about David Dasher Fofana, and obviously I want to add Ben Chilwell in today because I know Ben Chilwell was trying to get a move to Turkey, I think last Monday before their window shut. Can you see either of them going, or could you see Ben Chilwell playing in Greece? Could we maybe facing him in the Conference League in a couple of weeks?
I thought you were going to say, can I see him ever play for Chelsea again after Maresca's comments? No, but playing in Greece, I mean, it's a nice destination to live in and go to, but I still feel like maybe Turkey, just fully because of the kind of appeal. I mean, there's so many players, ex-Premier League players, the likes of Tadic, the likes of, I think Wilfried Zaha was there last season, that go to Turkey and play, and the level is quite competitive. I think Galatasaray only just won the league over Fenerbahce last season, and Mourinho as well. He's coaching out there at the moment at Fenerbahce, so he could be a big kind of pull factor for someone like Chilwell. But if it's his only choice, then he's got to take it. You'd rather that than just sit in the bomb squad for the next full season and not kick a ball at all.
It's interesting because the Turkey window's shut now, so it is literally just Greece, I think, and maybe a couple of other leagues that are still open, but the big ones being shut now. It's if I was Ben Chilwell, I'd be worried. I'd be worried now because if you don't get a loan deal, which is very unlikely in the next 48 hours, you are literally going to be sat there surplus to requirements for the next, until the winter window, which is not ideal for a player of the caliber that Ben Chilwell has got in him. It's not ideal at all.
Definitely not. I think it's worrying as well that I think it was only Brentford that showed a small interest in him in the summer, and there was no one else. I think there was talks of United when Shaw got injured, but other than that, no one really showed any concrete interest. It's a shame because I think it's his fitness issues that have really kind of made him suffer. But yeah, he's just got to keep your fingers crossed for all parties that something happens for him in January.
I'm going to put it out there. I actually think, and I don't know if they can because they've already got a player of ours on loan, but I think Everton will come in for him in January.
Yeah, it'd be a good move for him if he's able to play regularly. I think Brentford would have been a good move as well because I think they had Reguilon on loan at left back last season. And he left, so it would have been a good kind of swap. And he gets to stay in London as well. But Everton, why not? Yeah, especially that they're going to be in a relegation dogfight this season. And they've got their shiny new stadium potentially in the Championship as well. But,
the Tesco Stadium, as they're calling it these days, I think. So we'll have to see. But no, always a pleasure doing the pod as always.
Likewise.
We're approaching 150 episodes, which is another milestone. We'll have to think what we can do for 150. But don't forget to leave your comments, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. As I said at the very start, if you managed to get to this part of the podcast, and great, amazing, thank you. So make sure you hit the Linktree link in the description. That'll take you to the social accounts and the audio version of the podcast. As I said at the start as well, if you're on the audio version, still hit that Linktree link and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. We'll be back next week, I think, Theo, won't we? Hopefully. 3 points in the bag.
Hopefully 3 points at the Vitality Stadium to talk about. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, we'll catch you very soon, and we'll be back. Enjoy the rest of the week.